Hello everyone, we are back and we're going to put together the top tray for our distress ink holder. We're going to let this dry like I said previously. So we're going to apply the paper tape the same way. Hopefully you have your chipboard pieces already cut out. I have already wet half of my strip here, and I'm applying it by lining that edge of the chipboard to the folded edge of the paper tape, and I'm going to do that on all four sides. I didn't wet the paper tape completely. I left half of it dry, half of it wet, only because we want to, one, not use up not to weaken that adhesive on the paper tape. And then the fourth side here, I'm just butting it up against that folded line. And then we're going to wet the rest of the tape. And then we're going to take our sides of our tray and we're going to apply that the same way we applied the sides of our base units. And we're going to bring that paper tape up, and then we're going to burnish. And what I'm going to do is all four sides, and then we'll do the securing of the sides to make it squared up. And you're just going to lift that tape right up onto that side piece and burnish when you can. You definitely need to have a gap here. If you're, I like to use the outer side of my chipboard. I don't put the chipboard on top of itself. That's just me. But however you do it, you just want to make sure that you're consistent so your box will be square. And like I've been saying, if you start out on the outside of the chipboard, don't go to the inside, because then you won't have something that is squared up nicely. And so let me just fix this a little bit here. We're going to put the last piece on. I'm just lining up those edges on the back, and then I'm going to make contact with that tape, lay it down, and then do some burnishing on that side. And then I'm going to turn it over and burnish it really good so that tape is laying flat on the back side. And again, just spritz with a little bit of water if the tape comes up to activate the adhesive. You want to trim any hangover pieces of tape that are hanging over, because you want your tray to be squared up. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just cleaning it up a little bit. Okay, and so this is going to be forming the tray that sits on top of your distress holder, ink pad holder. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to put tape on the side corners of our tray, and you want to measure up some tape so that you can cut some pieces that will fit the height of your sides. I think I can get 4 pieces out of here. And basically you're doing the same thing. You're just going to wet, folding the adhesive side together, and you want to lay the paper tape onto that edge, butting up those corners so you get a nice 90-degree flush corner. You can see that, and maneuver it however you have to make sure you're squared up and you're sitting there on the outside edge of your chipboard. Okay, we'll take care of the excess. So you want to reinforce that corner. So you're going to fold it so that your pre-gummed part of your tape is on the outside, and go ahead and spritz that with water. And then you're going to put that second piece in there so that your corner is now going to be of your tray is going to be reinforced. You really don't want your tray to fall apart on you. So let's do that again. I'm just taking a piece of the mailing tape, the height of my side edge. I'm going to spritz it with some water. I'm going to come in here on the outside, making sure my corners are lined up. And I'm going to lay that tape where the fold line is matching the corner of my tray. Just make sure I'm on camera for you guys. Pull it tight if you need to get it flush and squared up. Okay? Just like that. And let's do the inside of this one. So you're going to fold it so that the pre-gummed part is on the outside. You're going to spritz it with water, and you're just going to put that folded edge right into the corner there, pressing firmly to make sure that you have really good contact. You can use your bone folder to give yourself a sharp corner there. You really, really want to take your time and do this so that your tray is sturdy. Okay? And we'll clean up those edges in a bit. All right, this one looks like it's going to do. So we're going to fold that one in half and spritz it down. We're going to do this corner. I'm just going to line it up here, making sure that I am as square can be with my chipboard. Pulling where necessary to make sure you've butted your edges up nicely. Use your bone folder to make sure your chipboard is laying on the outer side. Nice and square. Let me see if I have another piece of tape I can do. This one will do. I'm gonna need like 1, 2. And then fold it shiny side out. And folded side goes in that corner. I'm pressing firmly just to reinforce that corner. Burnishing where necessary. Last corner. Put that in there. Oopsie. Make sure I'm squared up here. Nice and square. Again, let's not worry about what's sticking up at the top. We're going to fix that by trimming that off. We've got a couple more steps to go here before we finish taping off the box for the top. Okay. And then let me do the inside. So that will finish off our corners. I'm just taking my bone folder and giving myself a nice sharp corner there. Also making sure my tape is nice and flat. So once you are satisfied with that, then you can go ahead and trim off anything that's hanging over. And you do want to trim because, again, you don't want to add any bulk to the top of your tray or the bottom of your tray. So if you got a little hangover on the bottom, you just want to take your scissors and just trim it up a little bit because you don't want to add that bulk. Okay, so we're not done because just like with the other parts of our project, we are going to put some reinforcement with the mailing tape on the inside of our tray. So you're going to fold your tape so that the pre-gummed sides are facing out. And you're going to burnish. You're going to need your 4 sides. You're going to need one more. Folding that out and burnishing. And so now we are going to wet it, and then we can wet actually all 4 of them at once. gonna wet them up to activate that adhesive. So here's our tray. So the inside, we're gonna go in the inside. And if you have cut yours a little bit too big, like I have, just trim off what the excess. You take that folded side and you're gonna put that into the inside corners there of that paper, of that tray. So you want to do that. You want to get that folded edge butted up against the side, and you want to do a nice burnish of that tape so it's laying flat. Okay, got a little bit stuck on me. All right, and I cut this one out. I think they're all going to be slightly longer. Take the folded edge, you're going to butt it up against the bottom there. And you're going to use your bone folder if you have to. Lay that tape nice and flat with a good burnish. Be careful not to poke a hole. And then you want to do it also for the side of the tray. Okay, it's looking pretty good. And I know I'm gonna have to nip this one a little bit. That corner, that folded edge is being butted up against the bottom part of my tray. I'm gonna lift that tape up, make some contact, use my bone folder to smooth that over. And you can use your bone folder if you get a crease like that, like I did. But so long as it's smooth, you're okay. Because again, you're gonna paint this and then you're gonna mat it as well. At least if you follow the project that I created, you will be matting the bottom of your tray. And the last piece on the inside, I'm just gonna lay that down like that. And burnish. Reinforce that really well. There you go. Got a little carried away with my burnishing. But you want to make sure that tape is laid down nice and flat. Oopsie, that side really is, doesn't want to stick. Okay. All right. So we have essentially made our tray. And you just want to make sure you have the majority covered. And then we're also going to finish the top edge. I really do think this is a necessary step. One, because we did it with all the other pieces, but you also, it just makes it, gives it a more finished edge. And it also gives the project just the way the chipboard, it just looks a little bit more finished. So we're gonna need 4 strips, and you know, your strips don't have to be terribly big, just so that you have enough to grab both sides. And we're gonna fold that in like we've been doing. You guys are going to be pros at doing this by the time this project is over. And then we are going to spray to activate that adhesive. And then we're going to lay this on top. Hopefully I got everything on camera. And boy, I'm really cutting longer today. You're just going to lay that on top of that edge of your tray. And again, I just think it's a more finished look. Let's see, that one might be okay. Yeah. just really making sure that's laid down nicely. Okay. And let's do this edge. This is a little too big, so I'm going to trim that up. Send this aside. So I'm going to go ahead and spray that. There you go. And then one last one. And I think I'm going to trim that one up too. Okay. I'm going to take my bone folder and just making sure I have really good contact all the way around. Getting those corners down. You don't want to lift these to lift up while you're painting the box. One's really good. Okay, same thing. I'm going to take, to finish that edge off, I'm going to take my bone folder and lightly press to square the top part of my tray off. I'm just squaring the top part of the tray so that my chipboard is not rounded at the top. It looks squared at the top when you look at it. It just gives it a really cool finish here, so that because it's squared off. So this is the tray that's going to sit on top of your distress ink holder. I think that looks really, really good, as a matter of fact. So nice. So at this point, what you are going to do is get your area ready for painting. Now, here's a couple of suggestions. If you don't want to paint the project all the way over, completely over like I did on the original project, you can just distress the edges and then mat your paper. So what I did on the original project was I painted the entire thing black, inside and out. You don't have to do that. You can just go ahead and distress your edges. If you like the craft paper look, you can use the mailing tape as your craft paper base and just mat 1/8 of an inch or however wide you want your mats to be all the way around. It's completely and totally up to you. But I'm going to go ahead and pause for a minute and get my painting supplies, because I am going to paint this completely black, because I have a or the original project is black, and that way I have 2 matching distress ink pad holders. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'll pause and let you get caught up with making your tray, and then we'll come back and go on to the next step for putting together the distress ink rotating holder. Hello everyone, we are back, and hopefully all 4 of your units are all put together. The glue is on really good. You got it all squared up there at the top and the bottom, and we are ready to do some painting. This is the tray. Hopefully you got your tray completely done as well. So that's why I'm wearing the gloves, by the way, because we're going to do some painting and I don't want black paint all over my hands. So in other videos that I showed in my walkthroughs, I talk about type of paint that I use. You can just purchase any old black acrylic paint if you're going to use black as your base. This I think cost 79 cents. I got it at Michael's, so you can use that. My all-time favorite, but it's a little bit more expensive, it's the Liquitex acrylic color in the Mars black. I really love this acrylic paint. It goes on black, really dark. It's thick. It has a bit of a sheen, not too much, but again, you're gonna pay probably like, I don't know, $10 for this tube. So on a project this size, you just need to decide what you're going to do. The other thing I had mentioned is you could use some distress ink and just distress the outer edges and some of the inner edges of your project if you want to, or you can use walnut stain or any other type of color medium that you want to use. You can also not paint any of the edges if you don't want, and just leave it the craft color if you want, and then you would just matte just 1/8 of an inch out, or a quarter, whatever you decide. You could do it that way, but I'm going to paint mine since the original project is black, and I'm going to end up with another rotating distress ink holder. I'm going to have a matching set. So as far as brushes are concerned, you can use a foam brush if you want. You can use a traditional paintbrush if you want. It really doesn't matter. It's just whatever you are comfortable with. Usually I start out with a foam brush, and then I will do some touch-up work with a traditional paintbrush. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'm going to show you how I just paint part of my edges. And we're going to start with the tray. So I'm just going to stick some paint in a I'm not going to dilute this paint, and I'm just going to go in a little bit. You don't have to paint the whole thing black. Just your top edges, your side edges, and your bottom edges of each side, because you're going to put some paper, hopefully, on your outer and inside parts of your project. So do not worry about that. So you just want to get however much you desire onto your project. It's really just as simple as that. And we're going to do this on the inside, and we're going to do this on the outside of the tray piece, and then also our actual distress ink holder. So I'm just going to do a little bit more here, and then I'll show you what I do as far as painting the distress ink holder. And you're going to do the inside as well. I'm just going to do a little bit around the edges. One of the things is when you're choosing what type of paint you're going to use, not all of the acrylic paints will do a one coat coverage over the mailing tape. You may have to do 2 coats if you want that completely black, or whatever color you're choosing. And here's like one of the areas that I would use a regular paintbrush to paint in that section right there. So I do have a wet brush that I have here, and I would just use my regular paintbrush to get into the corners here as I'm painting off some of this for my matting. Okay, so that's the tray. You're going to do that all the way around, inside and out on the tray. And if you want, you can paint the whole bottom of your tray too. So, but how do I paint this, which is pretty big? Well, basically it's the same thing. However, I chose to paint the entire inside of the unit, the slot. I just wanted the whole thing to be black. And the reason why I wanted that is because if you got any ink onto the chipboard, that you wouldn't see it and wouldn't look as messy. So I opted to go ahead and paint the whole thing. You do not have to do that. It's just what I chose to do. And I thought I liked that look for my holder. You do not have to do that, but it's just as simple as painting, and actually it's quite relaxing. You're going to want to paint your entire distress ink holder, and again, this is your preference, but if you look at the video of the finished project that I posted, you could see how it will look with this completely painted. So go ahead and do that, and don't forget you want to do your top edges as well. You want to, because you're going to matte that, or you may decide not to, but I did it for the project. So you're going to do the same thing all the way around, all 4 sides, and if you want, the bottom. And then we will come back and we will start matting and then assembling the hardware for the rotating box. Hello everyone. Okay, so at this point you should have your unit completely put together and also distressed your sides or painted the inside, just like the example here for our project, and all the way around. You don't have to do the bottom if you don't want to. You're not going to see it, but this is what you should have completed already. The other thing you should have completed already is the putting together the tray, and also distressing the sides and the outside and the inside. And then you want to make sure you have already adhered your chipboard to the bottom of your Lazy Susan hardware, and that it is nice and dry. We are going to, this is actually going to be probably the last step in the project. I like to put it on last, although if you prefer you can put it on now, and then you can use the Lazy Susan to spin as your project as you're matting it. I'm going to do mine last. The other thing, you want to make sure you decide on if you're going to put feet on your tray to lift it up off of the actual distress ink holder. And if you saw in the project video, you saw that I did lift up that tray just a bit. Now, I used little cork feet for the original project, although I like this higher elevation for my tray, so I might switch the those out with the little spools. The spools, I do not know who the vendor is. They were gifted to me by my sister Mary, so and I'm not sure where she got them from either, but I like the higher profile of the tray. I think it's just a really cool look to this holder. So you'll need to decide if you want to do that. You do not have to. You can simply glue the tray right to the top of the box just like that. Looks great either way. You just need to decide. And I know, let me just step back for a second. I know there are a lot of steps and details to constructing this project, but I think of this as furniture for my craft tool, and my craft tool in this case is the distress ink pads. So just like in our everyday lives, furniture needs to look great, but it also has to be sturdy. And if you constructed this the way we have been doing in the tutorial, then you know this is a solid piece of craft tool hardware. It is really, really strong, especially if you use the mailing tape method. It just adds that extra strength to the construction of your project. So that is where you need to be. And so today what we're going to do is start matting our project. And for that I am going to be using the Mariska paper pad collection from Recollection. I so love this paper. I think it's really, really pretty. I love the florals. I think it'll be a good complement to the Graphic 45 floral shop papers that I used on the original project. There's some cut aparts in there, but the colors are just absolutely gorgeous. To complement the mats of the designer paper in the Mariska collection, I am choosing to use a dark solid cardstock. This has a little bit of a texture to it. I believe this is from American cardstock or AC cardstock. I'm not quite sure. But you'll also want to decide if you're going to do a complementary color for your matting. So let me turn the camera around and let's get started on matting our distress ink holder. Hey everyone, so we're on the home stretch of finishing the distress ink rotating holder, and I am going to show you how I put my matting on my my holder. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. I did use some of the Tim Holtz black soot distress on this paper that I selected because it has a white border that you can see, and I really don't like that on when I'm using a darker print paper. I like to have that covered up, so I just take whatever distress ink I'm using and I just go over that so that you don't see that white core on the back of the paper. I also think that it gives it a really cool dimension, so you can use that with any distress ink that you want to use. So hopefully you have all of your matting pieces cut out and ready to go for your tray and your rotating holder as well. So I'm going to start with the sides of the holder here. And typically on larger projects, I do not use score tape or double-sided sticky tape. I like to go ahead and use liquid glue, and what I do is I kind of make my own mixture of the Aleene's tacky glue and add a little bit of hot water until I get my the consistency that I want in the glue. And it's worked for me really well. And to be completely honest with you, I was not a big liquid glue fan. I only used it if I absolutely had to. I thought it was really super messy and didn't have much success until I started experimenting with the liquid glue and how can I make it to a consistency that works really well on my projects. And this method I've been using for several months now, and it's worked perfectly. And thanks to the wonderful Ginger Rop, who totally encourages folks to burnish. I think the real secret to all of this is that you burnish everything down really well. So thank you, Ginger, for sharing that tip. I really think that it is the key to whether you're using liquid glue or score tape or any kind of double-sided adhesive tape. So even if you're using a glue stick, is to burnish really well. So I've matted my print to my solid cardstock, and then I'm going to put that onto my side. I have some of the black exposed. I kind of like that double matting that is on there. So I'm going to load up some glue onto my cardstock. And I know I did that probably off camera, but you guys don't need to see that. And then I'm just going to line it up and square it up where I want it to be on my holder. And then I'm going to press and make sure I have good contact. This particular glue from Aleene's does dry nicely. You won't see it. Got a little gnat that's been bothering me all morning. And you will have some glue ooze out. I actually think sometimes that's really good because that means your edges are going to stay down and they're not going to lift up. And again, I've had such great success with this method. None of my edges on any of my projects, including my mini albums, lift up ever. I do have examples of where it did. Okay, so that is the side. I think that looks really gorgeous, and it's going to look great as a complement to the original Distress Ink rotating holder that I did. I really think that's going to look great with that Graphic 45 floral shop paper. So I have not decided if I'm going to cover this yet. I did on the first project. I may do it on this project, but you're going to want to go ahead and put the paper wherever you want on your unit. You're also going to want to put your embellishments, whatever embellishments you're going to add to your tray, you're going to want to do that. But I wanted to show you how I put on the rotating base, the Lazy Susan base. Basically, it's the same way. You're going to take whatever adhesive, and you need something super strong, and I'm just going to go ahead and repeat the E6000. This is a mini tube of it, but you want to put that all on the flat part of your Lazy Susan hardware, all of this part, and you want to center it onto the box. And what you may want to do is put a dab or two of hot glue as you're trying to find center, then pull it off and put the E6000. JB Weld, I think, is another really good. JMB Weld, my husband uses that, and that works really well, but this works perfectly. So once you do that, though, you're gonna want to put a weight on this because you really want that to have some contact. So put something heavy on top, not too heavy that it's going to squish your box, but you want to put something heavy here so that it will make really good contact. And again, use per the manufacturer's suggestions, you want to make sure you let your glue or adhesive adhere. And basically, that is the project right there. That's completely done. I will come back and show you my finished box when I'm done with all of the papers, but you can go ahead and get started, and we'll come back and we'll show the final result of our rotating Distress Ink holder. So now you see both rotating Distress Ink holders here, the original and then the one I made for the sample I made for the tutorial. I put a couple of things. Again, I used the Recollection Richka paper. I don't even know if it's out there. If you got it, great, or you can use whatever favorite paper collection you like. The other difference is I used a little taller foot base here. And I know it's dark because I painted them black. I used mini spools, wooden spools that my sister Mary gifted to me. So that's why if you see a little height difference, it's just that I used smaller ones here, I used taller ones here. You don't have to raise your tray. I just like the look of it. It looks different. You can certainly lay your tray flat onto your unit here. This one right now, I'm not using it for anything. I just put some Tim Holtz Distress Oxide pads and some of the daubers in here so you can see how you can use this for your craft space. But it does spin just like this one. I can't tell you, I've had this almost for a year and it's held up great, not even wobbly. Everything is stuck really well. That mailing tape, if you haven't used it, works really, really well. But I am possibly going to be having this one, the sample, on my shop, which is on my blog. If you want one already made and you don't want to put it together, keep checking my blog, because I am heavily considering putting this one up for sale. I really don't need to, and the reason why I don't need to is because I only use a set of favorites from Tim Holtz Distress Ink and Oxides, so I do have slots for them. And because I designed it, I can make another one if I so desired. But I think this one may go up for sale. So keep looking on my blog, and hopefully you'll see it there and you'll be the first one to get it. I only have one. This is the only sample. So that is that. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. I want to first apologize if there's any glitches. Please forgive me on that. It took a long time to do. This is my first really big video tutorial, so I appreciate your patience with me, and sorry for those mistakes. If you really don't understand what's going on, you feel free to go ahead and message me, and I'll try to message you back as soon as possible. So thanks again for watching. Thanks again so much for your continued support. If you like what you see in this tutorial, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on my blog. Thank you so much.